there is the reward. The reward exists, and it is something that you can experience like every moment of your day when you know what you're not trading. You know,
The world has gotten bigger for me in terms of just thinking about how much abundance there is and the possibilities there are. This is going to sound cliche, but I feel so much better.
to choose to read this book, to stick with it and see it through. That is you selecting an identity and like choosing this narrative for yourself. I want to invest in my creativity, you know?
The shift is so important of, am I enjoying the process of this every week? And if one person listened to this podcast, in the world, like, would this have still been worth it? And the answer was yes.
Welcome to Creative Current, a podcast for those of us who want to get caught up in our creativity.
We're Jess and Jen, two friends and creatives who met in tech and realized we both spoke the same language of possibility, imagination, and creation.
We believe that creativity is a living force, powerful and magnetic. Like a current, you don't control it. And when you stop fighting it and let it move you, you realize it leads you to where you wanted to be all along.
This podcast is about staying with that current through self-doubt, uncertainty, and loneliness, and trusting that your creativity is worth it.
Over the next 12 weeks, we'll be following the artist's way, and we'll be discussing the chapters and our experiences doing the work. We see it as an opportunity to explore the depths of creativity and its connection to life's biggest questions and possibilities in a collaborative, community-building way.
We're really glad you're here.
Oh my gosh, we're at week 12 today.
I know.
The completion.
I am so proud of us for finishing this. I think that was like on my mental track the whole time I was reading, is like the fact that we actually completed this book, completed all the exercises.
Jen.
Hey, Jess. I know,
The completion.
I am so proud of us for finishing this. I think that was like on my mental track the whole time I was reading, is like the fact that we actually completed this book, completed all the exercises, feels like a real achievement. And I also am like, I don't think I would have been able to stick with it without this like accountability. So thank you.
I completely agree. I'm like, thank you. Yes, I was reflecting on this last night, and I was just thinking the exact same thing. Like, it would have been tough to do on my own. And then just coming and talking with you about the experience every week and what we're learning, what was hard. It was helping every week, like, move things through and getting past some stuckness and being pulled toward certain concepts of it. And yeah. I also, gosh, it's like, it felt like it went fast and slow at the same time. So we started this in February, and now it's May, and
it might have taken us a little bit more than 12 weeks to do all
Yeah.
the recording. Yeah. But that's okay. Yeah, I don't know if you would, say the same experience, but like I feel like the talking about it and having these like specific conversations to discuss what was going on and what we were learning and kind of go back and forth on it gave me this feeling that it was being digested at the speed that we were moving through the book, right? Compared to that, if I would have done it by myself, I think I maybe would have gotten kind of stuck or like spinning on certain things and not had that like forward momentum feeling. So
yes.
I feel like we sensed that a little bit at the beginning, which is like why we thought it would be valuable to record this as a podcast.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are so many people that have heard about this book or maybe curious about it, but like don't have someone right away in their life that they would be like, oh, can you read this with me? Or, like the timelines might not sync up. And so then I hope that hearing other people talk through it can be kind of a fill-in or a stand-in for that conversation.
And I also just want to say, this is an interesting question. I'll just pose it, and I do have an answer to this, but like if I had to tell somebody looking backwards before starting this journey, what would I tell them? And specifically, what would I tell myself? And I think, Jen, so in the beginning, I have a confession. I think by week 3, I was still not really doing the morning pages. And I kind of felt like a fraud. And I was like, how can you be doing this podcast on The Artist Way if you are not doing the morning pages? And I had a lot of guilt, y'all. Like I was walking around with that and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to do all of the exercises. And then somewhere between weeks 4 and 5, I just let it go. And looking back, looking back, what I realized was I still got so much value, and it's okay that it took a while for the morning pages to sink in. And the guilt, like I understand it, but I also didn't need to carry that. And I still got so much out of the exercises every week. And I think toward then, we were just cherry picking the exercises. And when I started with you, Jen, I was like, we need to do everything about this perfectly, like to the T. We need to check off all the boxes. And if we're not, just how can we sit here and talk about it? And it's just interesting because I feel like through this whole process, I mean, one thing I'm also trying to work on personally is this idea of softening. Softening when it comes to creativity, because when I soften, there is so much more flow. And so softening on the guilt or trying to just let the guilt go and move forward and like embrace the fluidity. Some weeks I did lots of morning pages, and some days I would write 6 pages instead of 3, and just sort of embracing the flow rather than the rigidity. And then over time, morning pages did start to integrate more for me. So I just want to call that back for anybody that's trying to do this and is feeling like, oh no, we got off the boat, or I didn't do this perfectly, or I didn't do all the exercises. Like, just keep going and give yourself grace. And I love this quote, which came from Cynthia Erivo's new short little book, which I highly recommend for anyone listening to this podcast. But she says, what you're drawn to is there to enlighten you. And so that's how I feel about the activities each week, is the ones that you're drawn to are there for, you're being drawn to them for a reason. You're going to get the values out of those. And if some weeks you don't have time for the activities, but you can reflect on just the reading, that's also really valuable. So I just want to put that out there. And Jen, like, what would you say to someone starting The Artist Way? What would you say to yourself?
I don't know how to put it into words, but it's that, like, I think like the value comes like you're saying, it's not specifically through any of the exercises or doing it perfectly, but it's like to commit to reading this book, to choose to read this book, to stick with it and see it through. Like, that is you selecting an identity and like choosing this narrative for yourself that like, I want to invest in my creativity, like I believe I have this artist capacity in me. I believe I have this creative capacity into me, and I want to nurture it. And I think like that choice, that intention to like set aside time and energy to like, I think like that is where any of the transformation like comes from, just willing to make that bet on yourself. So yeah. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what it would look like to do this book perfectly, but it's like, I didn't do it perfectly, there's a lot of exercises I didn't do, but I was really committed to like seeing it through. And I had tried to do the book in the past, and hadn't stuck with it. So I'm also like, I can so easily see how that would happen to other people too. And I think like, that's okay, Yeah, it's okay.
I loved what you said about it's like you're choosing this identity or choosing to create time for it. And there's something that's coming to mind in the background for me of how powerful that is, and the power that we all have to choose where we're spending our time, to rearrange our life around what gives us joy and making us happy. And Jen, you said it so beautifully in your newsletter. And well, Jen, do you want to mention what you told me about the newsletter in this last chapter yesterday?
Okay, yeah. So, well, this is an example of not doing the book perfectly because I didn't read the chapter for this week until last night. And the chapter for week 12 is called Recovering a Sense of Faith. And in it, she frames it like in this final week, we acknowledge the inherently mysterious spiritual heart of creativity. We address the fact that creativity requires receptivity. Am I saying that right? Receptivity.
Receptivity, yeah.
Receptivity and profound trust, capacities we develop through our work in this course. We set our creative aims and take a special look at last-minute sabotage. Okay, so anyways, what was interesting is I wrote a newsletter yesterday and then I read this and I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like this chapter maps completely to what I was articulating and saying and sharing like the story example of from my life, And so, and I have to say, like, this feels relevant in this chapter to talk about this because this feels like something that I have been noticing and sort of speaking to throughout the last many weeks. And it's that like each chapter feels like right on time. Like it feels like, yes, like I get this. This feels like the next step. This feels like I'm already walking in this. And that is something that I think is so true to this mysterious spiritual nature of creativity because okay, this is my interpretation of what is happening is that like Julia Cameron was able to capture the truth of the creative process so well, but it is not her theory. Like she channeled this. And so people that are committed to this, they see these patterns actually unfold in their own life. And she knows this. Like she has so much proof of this because she's walked with so many people. And that's why she's able to confidently be like, you will experience this. This will happen. These are the patterns that will come up. But I'm like, I believe that Julia Cameron channeled this truth and put it into a book. I do not see it as Julia Cameron's theory. And it's like self-evident in other people's life who are on the path.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like that, Jen. That's so... I keep thinking
think she would agree with me based on how she writes and how she talks about how ideas come and everything, but it's like I'm like, yeah, so it's like, it's even nice. I think like that recognition that I started to sense, like probably halfway through the book gave me more trust in the book because I was not feeling like I was listening to an authority. Like I was not like I'm trusting Julia with this. Like I am checking what's in this book against my own life and my own experience and like where there's resonance and I feel the trust, then it can be like integrated, because if I feel like somebody's trying to like tell me how to do something or like trying to put constraints on me or whatever, like I get really quick red flags and will rebel against it. And so I'm like, I was curious of like, why do I not feel this way? And why do I sense this other much greater receptivity? This word I don't know how to say.
Yeah.
Why do I feel like that? So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think she says in the beginning that she was meditating in Arizona or just had these downloads come to her and like New Mexico. Thank you. And the first one was to go to New York. And then I believe she was on a walk in Greenwich Village and she was taking walks every day. And then on the walk, she had another download or channeling about this class. And so anyway, that kind of leads us right back to this trust that this chapter talks about so much. And Jen, in your newsletter, I loved this newsletter issue you put out yesterday. And it is such a beautiful example of it's that same thing of when you look back, that's when you can connect all the dots. But when you're in it and you're looking forward, and I feel this way right now, I'm like very much in this energy where I think I know the next 5 feet ahead or probably 2 feet. And then past 5 feet, it really feels blank or just like, a little bit more of an abyss, or I see like fuzzy. You also used this one time, Jen, so I'm borrowing this from you too, but like a fuzzy billboard ahead that is still very unclear. Yeah. Jen, for people who will have not read your newsletter, do you want to summarize what you've taken in about trust and where it's led you right now? And how has that changed? Like, was it harder for you to trust before? And is this like the proof?
I wouldn't, okay. I think, so yes, I feel like I'm a hesitant to summarize this newsletter on the podcast, because the time gap might be confusing, but the newsletter edition that we're referencing is called, Would You Risk Relevancy to Hold Abundance? Okay, so for listeners down the road, if you want to go find it. And I would say the biggest thing that I wanted to grapple with is this idea of real trade-offs. And like there are actual choices that you have to make. And like decisions and choices is what moves you forward. And because I have recently just been getting more comments and response back, but I've been noticing that people are romanticizing some of the things that I'm making or doing, or my ability to write, or my ability to speak something, and assuming that something was easier than it was, or that whatever. And so I was like kind of grappling with that, because I'm like, that is not true. And if that is what, like, so like that's a projection, first of all, and like that makes other people feel better. But then it also feels really bad to me, because I feel both like my humanity isn't being, held. And like, then I'm also like, well, and this is not the right message, because the message is that you can also be in your power, you can also be. And so I was kind of holding that as like, I want to show where things are going really well, because I want to be true to this narrative that the more activated we are in our creativity, like it actually will change the world.
Yeah.
Like I said that the last thing. Like, so it's important to me to share the good thing, but I'm also just not okay with this like perception being formed that means that the path is just sunshine and daisies the whole way, and there's not actual consequences. Do you know what I mean? Because then people won't take action. Like people won't do the thing. And like things can come with ease, but that doesn't mean that they actually are easy. So anyways, and then to answer your question too, is I would say this feels like the most recent, is like a recent, and it's a big example, because I'm talking about things like risking the whole relevancy of a career and the choice, that parents face when they have their kids, and their kids are growing up so fast, and it's like, how am I spending my time? So these are like major life choices. And then the abundance piece, which I focused on like primarily like the financial aspect of abundance, which is not the full picture, because that's also the biggest one that like everyone is so worried about, right? I mean, it's like such a huge trigger point right now. And so I think like I focused on that, but I would say this pattern has like repeated in my life many times,
What pattern?
The pattern of trust. The pattern of like trust and being guided to the next step, and having things being able to coexist, like have these two realities exist, being able to be in integrity with what I want, what I feel like the right choice is for me and my family, and have all of the needs met.
Wait, Jen, okay. Oh, I love this. I want to dig in just a little bit on when you're saying, because I think this is so important and it is so real, of if people just see this road as sunshine and daisies, like letting them know that that's not true. Just to play devil's advocate here, if I think of myself maybe 4 years ago and I heard that and I was just feeling very blocked, I might hear this and be like, oh God, well then what is the point? Like, the only reason I would walk through a path like this is for something that I can get like way more of a reward than the path that I'm on now. So could we just tease that out just a little bit? Because it's like, I think that would freak me out in an old version of myself. And I have my own thoughts on this, but like, what comes up for you when I say that?
I want to hear your thoughts on this. But I would also say, like, the reward is so huge. Like, there is the reward. There is the reward. The reward exists, and it is like something that you can experience like every moment of your day. Like every day when you see how you're spending your day, every week when you know what you're not trading. You know, it's like but it is a trade. Like, so yeah, and there's so many ways to think about the trade, you know. I mean, whether it's the short-term gratification over long-term gratification, and not everyone's going to make it, but I mean, there is a reward, and the reward is probably better than what you can even imagine now.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it doesn't mean that taking the steps to get there is going to come without the pain of like growing or having hard conversations or all the everything that has to change.
Yeah. Stepping out of your comfort zone for growth, for the growth of the new path. And maybe that's like, you know, trimming the bushes as you're walking this path that is overgrown. So
yeah. But what would you say?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about this for a second. I think I'm going to start this in a little bit of a different place. I would say overall, day to day, I am feeling so alive with this new self-generation power that I have. And I definitely acknowledge, like, last week, for example, was a week that was feeling a little weird. And I was like, oof, everything feels very sort of uncertain. I feel like I'm kind of floating in the abyss, and I'm going to trust that there's a reason why I'm feeling this. But then this week, like, a few more things just came into play, and it just reminded me back to this trust concept. And actually, quick quote poll that I thought was so great that Julia says is, by trusting, we learn to trust. And that almost sounds oversimplified, but I realized I kept trying to figure things out and, you know, gearing myself up to trust, but it's almost like you have to just be okay with it. You have to be okay sitting in the discomfort and going through the process of not knowing what's coming next. So acknowledging the complexities here, yeah, overall, I would say the reward, at least right now, and it is, oh my gosh. This is going to sound cliche, but I feel so much better. I feel so much more alive. The world is more vibrantly colored. The world has gotten bigger for me, in terms of just thinking about how much abundance there is and the possibilities there are. So I think I want to leave people with, like, there are times that it will feel challenging, and it is so worth it still. It is so worth it. And if it's too challenging, I'm like, you can always go back. Like, everything is figureoutable, I think, is another phrase that I keep in my back pocket. But
yeah, I think that's Marie Forleo that says that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like, that is okay, from somewhere. So yeah, I think I'm also having fun in this new pathway. Maybe I haven't experienced the bigger challenges of it yet, but even still, I like what you said. Like, it is pushing us out of our comfort zone to grow.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about the relationship of, like, caring about what other people think or what other people are doing in this relationship with ourselves, because it's like, you know, so many people know why things aren't working for them in their current reality. They know what they would like to be doing, But then the fact that we live in relationship with other people and other people exist is like such a struggle point, you know? And I know throughout the book, Julia brings in other relationships a lot, you know?
Yeah, she does.
And she talks a lot about like the interplay there between other people. And I think like that is what, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's just like, I think I know a lot of people who are really courageous and creative and brave, and they would probably say, "Oh, I don't care what other people do." But I'm like, there are some people that you do care about, that you're worried about how it will affect, or even the so I think that like ability to strip away all of these other things that we should be, that we think that we've already signed up for, and let ourselves like fully reinvent ourselves. So it's like one of the hardest things about trust and intuition is that if you feel intuition, a lot of times you have this like knowing and this clarity of the direction you're supposed to go, but you do not have all of the evidence because it's coming from intuition, right? You're listening, you're paying attention, so there is not evidence. And yet everybody that you talk to is looking for evidence to like make it make sense.
Everyone.
You know? And so then, and I just like, we had this conversation like way back, I think before you even left your job, because I was like, because then you end up in conversations with people. And this is also in week 12, she talks a lot about keeping your ideas to yourself, like just trusting them. And I'm like, this is why, because as soon as you start talking to someone else and they're looking for evidence or confirmation that it will work or that you've thought it through, then you get put on the defensive, and you then start trying to answer the questions that are being asked of you so that you don't look like a fool, so that you try to gain confidence, but because of the position that you're in, you can't effectively do that. So then you start to self-doubt, you know? So like, I think like you had a meeting and felt really strong going into it, and then you like left the meeting, and it was like somebody who was a mentor in your life, somebody that should have been supporting you, and you left feeling like they made you feel like you didn't really think everything through, you know? And I was like, this is just not, it doesn't mean that you haven't thought any through. Like, oh, I hear this so often, and it hurts so bad to me to hear it, because I have not found, like, coaching clients is one thing. Like, if people are in a coaching arrangement, they are signed up to do the work. But like friends and family in my life that are saying that they can't do X, Y, Z because they don't have other thing in place yet, I'm just like, how do I'm not able to change this. And yeah, I want to, because like you, I don't know. Just in my, I don't know if I'm making sense, but you don't need, it doesn't need, you don't need to have evidence, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, beyond what you can trust. Like, if you feel like you can trust, like you can trust yourself to trust, that is what I would say.
I love that. Oh my God. I definitely need to clip that. You do not need evidence. Yeah. And I had this thought, Jen, as you were talking as well, that yes, we're stepping out of our comfort zone, and we're, chopping through a new path that is grown over. But I don't know, do all humans sort of start out with these multiple paths, and the ones that are creative or the ones that are risk-taking and innovative and, any other scary adjective that is not the norm, is that like society just conditioning of the growth, the overgrowth? And do some of us just have more interest? I don't know exactly why. Like, some of us are, or maybe more exposure to others in our life who have shown us that this is possible and this is safe and this is okay, or like our own inner drive to kind of just push through and clear that path. And another thing I've been thinking about is, maybe some people, this isn't where their motivation is. And I'm really trying to expand my thinking. I've said this on the podcast before, of how my mom was like, it takes all kinds of kinds, and everyone is different, and not everybody has the same dreams and motivations. So I think how do I wrap that back? it's like some of this I feel like has been a lot of unlearning, and with the idea of trusting ourselves and trusting our intuition. How did that pathway get so overgrown? And Jen, I know we've talked about this on Marco Polo, but I grew up in a community that I remember in high school, it was like science and math were valued just so much. That's where all the money was going to in school. I'm sure so many people can relate. This is not, a unique experience. But, and then friends around me that were scoring high on SATs, it was always in math and science. And so, I mean, another thing in this book is, and when I talk to people, I'm like, man, well, what is that unlearning look like? And I think that's such a valuable word that I try to bring up every so often for myself, of some of the stuff we already just know how to do, and how do we nurture it and protect it. And yeah, Jen, you, to that point, one thing I did want to talk about is in this mystery section in this chapter, she starts it out by saying, creativity, like human life itself, begins in darkness. And so she talks about how, like a child in the womb, creativity also needs time to sort of incubate and form in the dark inner cave of consciousness. The ideas form in drips and drops, not by squared off building blocks. We must learn to wait for an idea to hatch. And so, yeah, I think in this phase of my life, I've been spending so much time in my apartment, and I've made my apartment this amazing space to be. But a lot of that is to just be internal and to have the safety and reinforcement of my own beliefs without the magnetism of what is safe and comfortable for other friends of mine that would pull me away from this or surface self-doubt. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I think you asked this question earlier. I'm going to kind of jump back to it because of the, like, on the unlearning point, because I think that's a good one. And as you were speaking about, okay, unlearning and all these things that like culture has valued and kind of like we've lost touch with other things. I think like a practice that we can use to unlearn and put value towards these things is just to value the creative things, value the things that are rooted in, the life that we want. And I have an interesting story, an example of this. So I've talked about like the Move and Make art studio on the podcast before, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when I printed out some flyers and was wanting to go hang them around the community, do some marketing that way, like flyer-based marketing on community boards, I ended up encountering this thing multiple times where there would be a community board and I saw it, walked past it, see all these things, different types of things for families, for kids, some that you have to buy tickets for. And then I ask like, hey, I have this flyer for this program. Here's what it is. Is it okay if I hang it up? And I would get like a glance on it and I got positive response initially, although I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then they'd say, well, you're a nonprofit, right? Just have to check. And I was like, no. And then they're like, oh, I'm sorry. We only can support nonprofits. And I was like, okay, walk away. And I was like, my response to this was so intense because I was like, yeah. I was like, of course, of course, people that are going to assume that a program for kids that's about art, that's about nature, that's created by a mom is something that's going to be free and is a nonprofit. And so and this is like something that came up as a hesitation right away when I got the idea of like, who will pay for this? And then I've had this whole battle in my head, of like, what will people think of me if I charge? Because there's all sorts of craft events or gathering events for adults where you have to pay.
Yeah.
For an instructor or not. Like I'm charging in that ballpark. And also it's not childcare. Like parents have to come to my program. Like it's a shared experience. So there's no child care. We're using nature materials. But I'm like, the paying for it is an essential ingredient because this is about valuing these things because nature is valuable. This bark that is falling off the trees that I'm going around and collecting, like, it is valuable, you know? And like all these sticks that have fallen off the trees, like, they are valuable. And my time is valuable. And
Yeah.
the experience is valuable. The learnings are valuable. Like, this is actual value, and money as a way to exchange for that value. And also, like, you can then be like, oh, well, that's entitled. Like, that's elitist. Like, only for a few that can afford this price. And I'm also like, but the only way that it will ever be able to expand beyond that, that I would ever be able to expand beyond it, is if I make money from this, because I need to fund it. I need it to be supportive to me, because you know what? In like the larger vision, like, this goes well. This is an experiment. If it goes well, if I create products out of it, if I sell it, then of course what I would do out of the ability, when there would be some type of structure, would then to be able to donate them to people,
Yeah.
like kits, but they're like, there needs to build it anyways. And I'm just like, it was so interesting to get like a little taste of that response and be like, this isn't something that we can even promote for you, because it's not. But then I'm like, that's like whenever we think about like an unlearning thing,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, the culture is not going to change until we change and we start to tell it that these things are valuable, and we start to show up and be like, this, you know, which people, I know so many people already talk about this. This is like why where you spend your money matters, you know, and everything matters. But yeah, it's like, no, like people, but this is again the trade. It's like, usually that narrative is not going to be given to you to walk into. You have to choose it.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, but I think this is such a valuable reminder. And in a city that also has lots of arts and culture, I'm just thinking, I'm like, it's so easy for me to just walk into a bar and like drop $30 on 2 drinks or something. It can be a little bit of like a default setting, like, oh, I'm just, it's reactive, and my friends are there, and I feel so like at that, when I think back working full time and feeling so overwhelmed, this just felt like an easy, option to do. But now, like, anyway, now I've also been drinking a lot less. Like, does that make it sound like I'm a big drinker? I don't know. But
No.
I have been around a lot of people who, I was so grateful for this, actually. A friend of mine back in January, who's like, Jess, do you want to maybe just watch the sunset? And like, I forgot that could be an activity. I could just go sit on a hilltop and watch the sunset, and I could bring my watercolors. And I think because, I don't know, life has been supporting me with like integration of more folks who are my age, in my age group. So like 30s, and a lot of us are active, but like a lot of my new friends from yoga, they are going surfing on Saturday mornings. So they're playing volleyball in the park. And even though those aren't directly creative activities, I mean, I think they are still with movement. It's like gotten me to sort of come back to, oh my gosh, how much more does my world open up when I take the $30 that I would spend on a bar and go watch a live musician, or go to this breathwork meditation class, and, also save my money and go play volleyball with friends for a little while in the park. And yeah, I think I had forgotten what that was like, because in my early 20s, I really did not drink. I didn't really drink that much until I got to New York City. I was 25, and I had to meet people, and going to happy hours was the way to meet people. And like, I don't judge it. I still love like a great crisp white glass of wine so much, but the revaluing, and I think for me, the remembering of like how much more my spirit comes alive when I invest or go to see a live music artist perform, or go to the watercolor workshop, or go to the figure drawing class.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is such a rich thing, because what I'm also like hearing in this is, or I mean, it almost feels like a parallel, like with the creative journey, because it's more like, again, this is not judging anyone's choices around drinking, but there is more authenticity and there is more connection if you're not drinking. Like, that is a fact. You can enjoy drinking however much you want, but there is a block. Like, it is literally a block, a literal mental block. So anytime where you maybe feel like more like yourself or able to let go, like, it is less authentic. You know what I mean? You still have a shield. You have a shield. And any connection that you experience, like, sure, people have so much fun when they're drinking together, sharing times, but like, the memory is not, it's so foggy, you know, like, it's like there is some, it is not the same as if you have a real fully sober conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Which is it's scarier to do, but it's more authentic. But again, like, that's like this, like, letting the layers, so like, and having more clear eyes, being more comfortable, being actually accepted as who you are. It's such a good parallel, and I love that you are experiencing both at the same time, especially because I think the uncomfortability that can come with a big life change can, if people aren't being like intentional, can like easily lead to coping behaviors.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? To deal with the transition. So I think it's actually really beautiful that you're like experiencing some of these other things coming while you're also in a more vulnerable transition phase.
Jen, the craziest thing about that is let's see, how do I say this? The times that I was working in a full-time job where I felt like I had to put a mask on and just get through, like, muscle through the day and feel so overwhelmed by all of the endless tasks on my list, that was when going to happy hour felt the most appealing for me. I think I remember 2 months into the job where I was like, oh my God, this is why people go to happy hour. Like, of course, I cannot wait to just go on a Wednesday or a Friday, you know, have a drink, and the drink would give me permission to let go of everything from the day. And I've been thinking about that, and every time that I am in balance and I'm not in that oppressive workplace environment, and not that all of my workplaces have been oppressive, but when I am in my balance and when I am working on things that excite me, the entire craving and desire has just like dropped down so much, maybe to like 10%, 15%. So that was something that I examined that is so interesting to notice. So interesting, and such a sign. Like, I would even take that as an intuitive message. And I think it's so easy to be like, oh, I don't know, this is just a pattern that changed. But like, I can also just sit with that and acknowledge and say, oh no, that's actually an intuitive note to self coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful too. I mean, we totally cut down on our drinking probably like a year and a half ago, kind of just like naturally, you know, not like a real reason, but it was like, oh, this actually feels a lot better, you know. Like, I can go like months without even having a drink anymore, because it's like, yeah, the desire's not there, or it's just, and again, also the trade. I mean, I'm so annoying saying trade-offs, but like, my whole life is, everything is a trade-off. I'm like, yeah, I could have that, or like, I could not, and I could just enjoy this, you know?
Yeah.
But it's also I think it's so powerful, also the ripple effects. And again, I don't want anyone to read in like thinking like of a moral judgment around drinking in this, but I will say it's really nice when, or it's inspiring, like any type of change. This is okay. Here's what I want to say. Outside of drinking, but including drinking, is like when people that you are in relationship make a change for the better, and you just like get to witness them like standing on something that they are moving towards. It is like so inspiring. I think, and again, maybe not everybody is able to do that. That's why it's hard to make change, right? Because some people don't like it when other people change. It makes them uncomfortable. But then I'm like, if that's people in your life, put up a boundary. But like, I like we had a couple of different friends that like stopped drinking for different reasons, you know, and it's just like so nice. Like our social events still happen. Sometimes we would still meet at the brewery and like I'd order a kombucha, somebody would order a non-alcoholic, somebody would do something else, but like we still had the social event, you know, or like people coming over to our house and like they're bringing drinks and they're bringing non-alcoholic options now and some beer or whatever, and it's like, but then everyone chooses and then you realize, oh, like over time less people are even choosing alcohol, because I think just, I mean, everybody's collectively on this journey, you know, so now we're all in different places, but it's like, oh yeah. Like more life please.
Yes.
Right, you know, like more
I got
consciousness
chills.
please. Yes.
Oh my God.
But sometimes not everyone maybe feels like they can be the one to like lead the change. So I think
Yeah.
that's like also just nice to show like, hey, I'm okay doing something different here.
Totally. Totally. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Wait, Jen, I'm like, hang on. There's so many good things in this chapter also. I'm like trying to, where's the tie back here?
Okay, Jess, here's a broad question for you about this
Yes.
chapter. So like I felt like the chapter just sort of ended. I was like so curious what the last chapter of this book would be and how it would send us off, and I sort of feel like it just kind of ended. Like it was just like, okay, and now I'm not gonna write anymore. How did you perceive it? Do you feel like you got a good send off? Do you feel
I did. Okay, here's my takeaways from this. I mean, I think she reminded me of some core the guidances. First of all, starting again with like creativity requires faith. Faith requires that we relinquish control. The reminder that creativity can take place in the dark. And like, you know, we kind of basically just put words to this, but escape velocity section, where it's so easy to kind of go back into patterns you're familiar with. But more so, especially from the tasks and check-in that she left us with, my takeaway was that she says, reread this book, share it with a friend as the very last task. And I thought, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And after finishing it, I was thinking I need to reread this again. In fact, as we close this podcast season, my plan is to write a Substack on every episode. So just continuing to like revisit the work. I kind of got this overarching impression of cycles, like in practices, and continue to make a practice out of this. So at least that's what I pulled to comfort me. But I think I do also understand your, you know, the feeling you had a little bit of like, okay, she's kind of like, go ahead, read the book again and go ahead.
yes.
What,
Yeah.
Tell me more about how, yeah.
Oh. Oh, I don't know if I have much more to say about it, but yes, I definitely think like cyclical like rereading of this and like the patterns is so true. Like you said. I was thinking, I was like, oh, I could see myself just kind of like flipping through this, you know, different times. Maybe I keep it on my desk for a while. Maybe I do it again. And then today I talked with somebody. And I was like, oh, I think I didn't say it to them because it was initial conversation, but I was like, I think you need to read The Artist's Way. Like, I think, yeah, this is interesting.
I also feel like there's a little bit of a call to, I mean, she says share this book with somebody. And then I was flipping through in my issue of this. I think you and Jen, you and I have the same issue, but she also talks about what it would be like to set up like a meetup with other creatives and to go through some of this stuff in there's instructions called forming a sacred circle. And I was actually digging back in here. And last night, I mean, talk about synchronicities. I realized, I don't know, and now I just feel, I'm like, oh, maybe we all need to do this a little bit more. But I thought, oh, why don't I just do a small meetup of 5 people and let's follow some of these sacred rules. And I was like, let's start by pulling a tarot card. Let's just talk about a creative project we want and only give positive feedback. And then, and just commune with each other and talk to each other and share encouragement. And I kept for so long thinking that seeing these events on Partyful for creatives, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's 40 people, there's an agenda. This person is somebody, they have an audience, they have a following, they have connections to this bar, and they have a DJ going or whatever. And then it kind of just occurred to me like, oh wait, I think I can at least pull 4 people. That's not too many, but 4. And maybe that's okay that it's just 4 and we meet in the park. And in this first sacred circle rule, it says, I just love this so much, creativity flourishes in a place of safety and acceptance. And like, anyway, what if I just start small here? And so again, I think maybe one big shift that's happening inside of me is the power to self-generate. And I can bring the community, like I can start a community. It doesn't have to be the community, but I can start one if that's what I am needing. And like, you and I started this podcast out of thin air. I mean, I don't know, even seeing this come to life and building it and publishing it each week, I've even surprised myself. And I don't know, this camera that I bought was $40 and this microphone was like maybe $80. It just really wasn't that expensive to get started. And then also these contracts that are coming in and like doing, executing on them and then seeing that roll into a renewed contract. So there is just a shift for me happening over here of like, wow, we all really do have the power, just if we take baby steps to generate the life that we want to live and where we want to spend our time.
Yes. Love that. Yes. And I love too the like switch of like being like, okay, yeah, maybe I don't gonna host this like big event because like there's a value shift there too. Is that like the intimate gathering? I mean, for different people, it could be so much more valuable, like to quote your mom, like it takes all kinds of kinds, like, and it takes all kinds of creative community to flourish, like a big event doesn't provide the same nourishment of like a small group, I
didn't even think about that. Yeah. And like Jen, you've done so much of this season. How are you feeling with everything that you've generated?
Feeling really good. Yeah, I'm feeling really good. I'm going in to the summer in 2 weeks now. I think it's 2 weeks for when summer starts. So like a big time shift, a big energy shift. And I feel so good because I like feel like I have my priorities. I feel very whole. I feel very like myself, and like parts of myself are coming out in every different avenue, but that like I am able to be my whole self in like that my whole self still fits in the room, even if I'm only using a part of it, in the different vectors. So that feels really good. And yeah, I think I have the thing that I need to trust, that I'm choosing to trust right now, is like in my capacity, and that I will be like resourced to like walk in to all of this work and be able to hold all of it without like compromising on my priorities. And that feels like a really good like culmination of like this book and this work, because that, like, I realize now as I'm saying this and I talk to other people that I'm like, yeah, like this is what is underneath so much fear, is that it's that fear of becoming, like, if I'm that person, I can't be this person. If I'm that person, then this needs to change. Like, I don't know how I could do my life if that's also true, you know, like, and I was just talking with someone who wanted to connect with me because they knew I was doing this children's book, right? And told me like that they have written 3 children's books and they have this whole idea of how they want to illustrate them, but like just can't start, you know. I'm like, oh, this is a creative block, you know. So I'm like talking to them about it and like hearing like, okay, and I'm like, you have this vision, like you have a vision, you are able to tell me exactly the illustration style you want, why it matches the book you want. Like, I just like know that this person has good books in them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm like, okay, so interesting treading in this lane, because I'm like, saying like, just do it. It's like so surfacey, you know? So I was just like, I'm just going to listen today. But it's so funny because then what they ended up saying was like, well, what could we maybe just collaborate? Like maybe you do the illustrations for me. And I just laughed out loud and I like put my hand on this person and I was like, you have not even seen my artwork. Like, this is your book to create. Like, this is your work to do. But it was like, that is how real these fears are. I was like, this person just was curious if I would illustrate their book that they have a clear vision for, because she's so afraid to do it. And I like empathize with that a lot, you know, but I am like, so like that is like so rich to me, as I was like, that type of block of like envisioning something, but like starting it feels so hard. It's like the baby steps, you know, is the only way to get through that. There is no way to automatically know that what you'll create is good or that it will match the vision or anything. Like you have to take the baby steps. And but also I'm like, you know, there's like so much around like outsourcing and getting things done and productivity, and I'm like, when I think that like when it comes to art and creativity, you can't outsource it because then it's not yours. You know, like unless you really try and you're like, this truly is not my skill set, but this person I believe has the skill set, you know. So
Whoa, that's a powerful anecdote, man. Because as you said, like, you know, even just hearing that, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there before, and I probably am there in different areas and different projects. But Jen, I love this, and even to reframe it as a creative block. I mean, that's the other thing that I think is so powerful about the Artist Way, is that it's giving us new language. And of course, Julia had this chapter on this, that like, are we using language that is helping us see more clearly what's going on, rather than just, you know, I don't even know if that person would see it as a creative block. And if we said that to her, would it, I'm assuming it's a her, but this person, like, would that make them think differently about it? Yeah.
And like it's like the grappling with the like like, are you comfortable? And this is like where I think like all the regulation, like nervous system regulation work comes into play too, because it's like you have to be comfortable with becoming and like walking towards a bigger version of yourself, like a more realized version of yourself. So it's like, yeah, this, and that is intimidating, or it can be really intimidating. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of this book is the practice of becoming more comfortable with the discomfort. And it reminds me of the concept of the window of tolerance that I used with my therapist a few years ago, which I'm sure it might be familiar to some people, but like widening, just like ease, just baby step widening that window of tolerance, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. It's not in a forceful way, but yeah, like how, because yeah, Jen, I think that's still, she actually asks, like, go back and list any fears that you still have. And one of mine is still, that I know is still there, is, I even wrote it down. I still have a fear that if I'm really successful, which we'll just leave vague for now, it will somehow disconnect me to people that I love. And that's one of the, I mean, that's a core fear that she outlines back in the early weeks. So how can we, I think through the building this into like weekly practices and affirmations, the media we consume, the conversations that we're having, at least for me, have all been bricks in building and like setting the foundation and doing it over time. It kind of reminds me of an athlete or a musician. Like keeping in the practice is so healthy and important for just continuing to take the steps into what that greater self is.
okay, I think this one resonate. That one resonates with me. That fear, I think it will resonate with a lot of people. So, I guess like my question is like, how are you like talking to yourself about that now then? Like with that fear, do you give it a reframe? Do you?
Great question. Okay. The first thing I would say is that I've looked at the last 3 months, and this is a very small example, but I posted an Instagram post that was so. I posted this video of myself where I am in pink, and the whole 10 photos were a representation of what I've been absorbing. And in the caption, it said, in her divine feminine. In the first video, I also look good, and I'm like waving to myself in the mirror with this song that I love. So it's a little bit TikTok-ish. And I knew like how much that would be judged by some people that I know in my circle. And also when I shared it, I felt so good about it. And it felt like a more accurate representation of where I'm at, and just like unapologetically showing up as myself, and feeling delighted to share it, and zero embarrassment. And that's a big shift. And so the reason why I'm thinking about that example is because I think I've started to see, well, it started with what my shift in what I found cringy versus what I find delightful to embrace and share with my expression, like the expression of me into the world. And if I'm rooted in that pillar and sharing this, I'm realizing that even if like some family members are judging this, it doesn't matter. And the family and friends that I love and want to stay connected to, they are celebrating it with me. So it's actually a myth right now. I'm starting to see little tiny bits of evidence that Me in my full expression is delighting the people who love me so much. It is not making them feel disconnected to me. And I think it's kind of holding, but mostly the focus is how do I think about myself after I share some, or, in the potential of sharing something and like evaluating and then wanting to share it. And if it's delight, trying that. And then also, just even with this podcast, that's a perfect example. Friends of mine who are showing up, feeling closer to me because of it and celebrating in that. So I think that's how I will leave that right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Is it okay if I add a little nuance to this
Yes.
perspective too, of
Yes.
how I have come to think about it also? Because you're saying it in here. You're saying it what you're saying. And I think it's like a reframe that I have offered myself, like when this fear comes, that it will bring disconnection, is that like I am safe, even if it creates disconnection, because I think it addresses it at a deeper level, because it's not just about, is this person showing up for me, or can they handle it, or do I want to be in relationship with them? Because there are a lot of people that I want to be in relationship with, and I will be in relationship with for my whole life, that might not be comfortable with everything that I do,
Yeah.
And so it's not it's like it doesn't even need to mean anything about the relationship, It's all about us,
Absolutely.
and our ability to handle whether we get support, whether we get ignored, whether we get criticized, whether really no matter what, whether we can tell somebody's having a hard time with us and just being okay, I can be okay. I can stay in my alignment with my choices, and I think that to me feels so, it just feels so powerful, and it feels like a really, really beautiful way to also be able to have grace and understanding for people who can't show up for us.
Absolutely.
In a supportive way,
Absolutely. And Jen, just for people that might feel like I am safe, maybe that feels, a little abstract. What I'm picking up, tell me if this is what you feel, but when it's like I am safe, it's like I love myself so much that somebody else's reaction to whatever I put out is, I'm not going to use that against me to weaponize myself. I feel content. I feel happy. How would you describe feeling safe?
I would probably, I guess I would go back to the word trust. I trust that I trust that my choice to do this, to share this, to write this, to publish this is in alignment with the truth that I'm aligning to, over it is worth it, because again, it's annoyed by myself using this word, but I'm because there is a trade. I don't know, Jess. I work in the realm of consequence. Things that I write and I say do affect people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not in theory. So I'm okay, this is going to ruffle feathers. I know that. Am I still willing to do it? And if yes, it's I need to be rooted to this trust that it's worth it. And that it's such a wonderful filter, because then it's what am I doing it? There's no, it filters out doing it to create a certain perception. It filters out doing it for a specific response. It filters, it's a beautiful filter. But yeah, I think like the safety to me, it feels like trust and alignment, because I know if I put something out there to try to, this is part of why I personally hate Instagram. So I'm glad that you used Instagram in a positive light for the story. But I'm like, when I used to feel like this pressure to post and like that I needed to do this, like it created a lot of this, like that feeling that like I needed to post, I needed to do this so that, you know, I could have a business, you know, like, and
Yeah.
like that pressure to post would then sometimes influence, well, what's something that I could write about? What's something that like might make sense in the feed? What's something that fits in with the rest of this week that I've been talking about? And that like, and then sometimes I would write something that would be like fine, and it might be like true, but it didn't have the resonance, like in coherence to like me and my truth. So, yeah. So I think safety is that trust.
Trust. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Safety is the trust that what you create and share is in alignment with your truth. And when we're in alignment with our truth, like what a gift and what calm and peace and serenity, you know? And beauty. That with connection of others who also align with that truth.
It's getting late,
We've
Jess.
talked so much, but I think this is appropriate. It's our last episode. I'm like, oh my God. I don't even know. I looked at the clock. Yeah, now we're at an hour and 18. How did that even happen? For most people, we usually stop around an hour. But, oh my gosh. Jen, this is so great. I'm even like, I don't know. What should we... I was having some flashes back to like wrapping this with our tagline with your creativity is worth it. Just like going back to that sentiment and, you know, starting this, and I don't know, Jen, like, yeah. Any like last thoughts on, or like takeaways for our listeners, for us, for you, for me?
I'd say a reflection. I would say a reflection is that, like, I think speaking is really powerful. I think verbalizing the things that we're thinking about and processing and dreaming about is really valuable. Like, I think journaling about it is good, but I think actually hearing yourself talk about it and having those vibrations like go throughout your body, and that frequency of hearing yourself be excited is really important. So I think like I have found a lot of joy in having these conversations, and I feel, I think I do feel different because of the verbalization of these things, because of the speaking of it. And I would say that that has changed to, I read when I write down good ideas now. I read my journals out loud to myself now when I have really good thoughts, because I'm like, I want to hear that. Like I want it to be quick on my tongue. Like I want it to feel like my words, not just my like ideas.
Yeah.
Do you know, like I want to embody it, I guess. But that's like, of course I do, because everything is about. So anyways, I think like what I would like to like leave other people with, or say like back to myself, and I have shared this with some people, is like, if you have an idea, like even if you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to about it, like talk to yourself about it and record yourself talking about it. Like leave yourself voice memos. And like notice how things feel physically in your body, and like what gets you excited and like what feels true, what creates resonance for yourself. So anyways, that is like a big reflection, is I think that this podcast, doing the podcast, not because the outcome was a podcast, but because it forced us to have a conversations and grapple with these things, feels like probably my biggest takeaway.
I love that. I completely agree. It's also been such a new experience for me to watch myself and edit our podcasts every single week. But it's been so interesting because I feel like that's another way to practice the material that so I'm sitting in the material double the times each week with our new podcast and our previous conversation. Okay. I think for me, I would just say that, I do just want to go back to our tagline, which came from Jen, which is your creativity is worth it. Hold on. Yeah. So I think the one other important reflection I've had is that I think I read something the other day that was talking about this and to go back to our evidence conversation, Jen, like I have further aspirations with podcasting, but I'm still like, oh, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Like, I still go back and forth on that. But with this, I think I had shifted, and the shift is so important of, am I enjoying the process of this every week? And, am I doing this because I'm getting something out of it with you, Jen, and like you're getting something out of it with me? And if one person listened to this podcast, in the world, like, would this have still been worth it? And the answer was yes. And it just kind of humbles and like tones down. It feels like it strips back down to the authenticity of where the magic of art comes from. And I don't know. If anyone knows me, this just would have been so far out of sight for me, even just a year ago. But just by taking the baby steps and like spending more time and creating more practices of going deep and going back to what do I enjoy doing, that's just opened so many doors for me. I'm trying to think of a question to pose to the audience, but maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Love it.
I'll share on my Substack later when we get to this episode.
Yes, I can't wait. Okay, so there'll be more dripping out through Jess's Substack.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jen.